session, and I'll request Dr. Yolekar to initiate the next session. Dr. Yolekar, please. Dr. Yolekar.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a big pleasure to conduct the next session. And our speaker is none other than Dr. P.C. Manoria, eminent cardiologist. And importantly, he's the host of today's program and the organizer. And he's going to speak on research to practice. We are all aware that research has been phenomenal, but what matters is what can be translated into clinical practice with benefits. I'm sure he's going to do justice to the topic. We look forward to your talk, sir. Welcome, Dr. Manodi. Welcome, Dr. Manodi.
Yes, just a minute. So, good morning, everybody. So, for the next 15 minutes or so, I'll be talking on this upcoming and interesting topic, from research to practice, the future of cardiovascular care. Medicine is essentially a resolution of uncertainty, and this has time again been proved on several occasions, and currently it aptly applies to cardiology, where research continues unabated 24/7 into 365 to provide us better understanding of the disease, innovative technologies, and innovative molecules. All of us have dreamed of genomics and molecular medicine, but now this is coming into a real reality. Genomics and molecular medicine is running front race in the current cardiac care, and it is poised to transform cardiac care. And in future, I think all medical colleges will have department of genomics and molecular medicine. Integration of genomics in cardiovascular care has enabled personalized treatment and approaches tailoring to individual genetic and molecular profiles. One of the most exciting example of gene therapy or gene silencing is CRISPR technology. This has two components: a guiding RNA, which locates the particular gene, and Cas9, which produces a double-stranded break in the particular gene. And this is being tested in patients with heterozygous familial hypercholesterolemia in New Zealand. So what is this technology? I think you can see the video. You will see this guiding RNA will locate the specific genome locus. Here it is PCSK9, and the Cas9 nucleus has produced a double-stranded break in this gene, and when it heals, it loses its function, which means this patient becomes loss of function mutation, and the LDL cholesterol drops to a very significant level for the rest of the life. So this is a single one-time treatment for reducing your LDL to sufficiently low levels for the rest of your life. And the credit for this goes to these two European ladies. You can see on the slide, Emilienne Carpenter and Jennifer Doudna, who got the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2020, and the hard-won trial with Verve 101 is ongoing in New Zealand, and some patient has already been successfully tested, and you can see the PCSK9 level drops to 89% with 1.5 milligram per kilogram, and your LDL drops to 68%. The beauty of this technology is that it is only one-time treatment and the effect lasts for your whole life. The second technology which is coming into vogue is gene silencing utilizing the ASO therapy, antisense oligonucleotide study, and this is being evaluated with pelacarsen, which is a new drug which is being tested to lower LP little a. Now, when we use this antisense technology, it blocks the translation of the specific protein. Here, in case of LPA, the ApoA cannot be formed because this is blocked and the level of LPA decreases. Here you can see this is an antisense drug. It reaches the nucleus, it combines with the messenger RNA, and the RNase H1 cleaves it so that the messenger RNA is broken down and ApoA cannot be synthesized, so the level of LP little a falls. And as you can see, pelacarsen, which is using this ASO technology, in a 80 milligram dose per month in a phase 2 trial decreased LPA by 98% of the patient below 50. And the Horizon trial is being testing the cardiovascular outcome, is likely to be released this year or maybe early next year, and then we will be able to have an evidence-based therapy to treat LP little a. The other unique technology which is being utilized is the small interfering RNA. Now this is also being utilized to lower LP little a. And this works on the principle that when you inject this small interfering RNA, it combines with the messenger RNA, it breaks this messenger RNA so that particular protein cannot be formed. Now, 3 molecules are in phase 2 and phase 3 stages of small interfering RNA. You can see olpasiran, these are for all LP little a, which is undergoing a phase 3 evaluation in the OCEAN trial. We have lepodisiran, which is ongoing phase 3 evaluation in the ACCLAIM trial. Alpacar phase 2 was presented in AHA, zilebesiran, and Kraken, which is an oral molecule. All these are injectable molecules. Movalapin, which was again presented last year in AHA. And the beauty of all these drugs is that they decrease LPA by more than 90%. I'll show you data of one of the trials. This is Alpaca trial presented ACC 2025. You can see LPA decreased by 93.9% with a 400 milligram dose of this drug, lepodisiran, and second injection given at 6 months reduced it by almost 90%. So when we look at the current status of LPA-driven cardiovascular disease is considered a slow death sentence because the disease occurs prematurely, it runs a malignant progression, aortic stenosis many times associated, and there's lack of any approved therapy. But if pelacarsen and small interfering RNA trials come out to be positive, LPA-induced cardiovascular disease will become a salvageable disease in future, and this will kick off a new dawn of LPA therapeutics which has never existed. And this is the blank space of elevated LPA. We are very hopeful that in times to come this will be filled by pelacarsen and small interfering RNA, the 3 molecules. The other technique of this ASO is now being utilized to target ApoC3. And again, here you can see when we use this antisense therapy to target ApoC3, it again cleaves and degrades this messenger RNA so that ApoC3 level decreases. And if ApoC3 level decreases, there's marked reduction in the triglycerides. As you can see on this slide, the first molecule which was tested was valnestron. The problem with this molecule was that serious bleeding due to low platelet count. The USA did not approve it, although the Europeans approved it. But now we have a safer molecule, olzarsen, which is approved by US FDA, BALANCE trial, and 80 milligram once a month decreased triglyceride by 43%. So we have again very powerful molecule to decrease triglyceride in patients with familial chylomicronemia syndrome or severe hypertriglyceridemia with gene technology. This gene technology is also used to target ANGPTL3 for mixed dyslipidemia. Diabetics often have mixed dyslipidemia. So with this technology, a new molecule, solmilsan, is produced which targets the ANGPTL3 and again was presented in AC. And you can see triglycerides virtually decreased by almost 60% at 180 days and VLDL again by 55 to 60%. You can see LDL decreased by 25% or so, non-HDL by 32 or 33%. So most of the lipoproteins have been decreased. So we are amidst a new era of lipid management with gene therapy once in 6 months, or if you employ the CRISPR technology for LD lowering, it's once for lifetime. So this is indeed very interesting. Otherwise, you have to take drugs every day. The second major change which has occurred is in the battle against atherosclerosis. For several years, we have been treating dyslipidemia to lower LDL. Then our target changed to decreasing the cardiovascular events. But currently, our target is to hit right at the plaque so that no plaque, no atherosclerosis is our aim and is indeed possible. So when we look at the issue, can we stabilize the plaque? All of you would agree that statins can stabilize the plaque. Can we arrest the progression of atherosclerosis? Beautiful data for reversal trial. High intensity statin does it. And this occurs when your LDL is less than 70. That's why even the Lipid Association and other guidelines recommend to keep your LDL less than 70 for primary prevention, even because atherosclerosis progression stops. You can also regress atherosclerosis, Glagov trial, and this occurs when your LDL level is less than 50. So our aim is now to have decrease the cumulative exposure of LDL to the vessel wall, because that is the most important determinant of patients of acute myocardial infarction, and this usually occurs when your LDL level CH threshold increases to more than 7,000 milligram per year. And therefore, if you lower your LDL to very low level, less than 70, right from early age, you would develop myocardial infarction after many, many years. The myocardial infarction can be postponed. And this is the very interesting slide. LDL lowering is considered a lifelong marathon. So if you go through this marathon with your LDL less than 70 or even lower, you will go through, cross it without any problems. But if your LDL levels are elevated, you can develop subclinical coronary artery disease, you can develop myocardial infarction and get infested. So LDL lowering is a lifelong marathon if you want to postpone myocardial infarction by several years. And this again, although LDL lowering is very important, but you never ignore the other risk factors as I mentioned here. It has to be a multifaceted approach, because if you do not pay attention to these risk factors, this threshold from 7,000 may decrease to 6,000. And we have published this in the World Journal of Cardiovascular Disease, postponing acute myocardial infarction to 100 years, an emerging concept. And our great Dr. Braunwald also thinks in this direction. And this can be achieved by CRISPR technology, and now inclisiran is being used because single injection 300 milligram every 6 months, preceded by injection at 0 and 3 months, decreases LDL by 50%. This remains there for 6 months, and this is being tested in very interesting 2 trials in UK. All these patients are given inclisiran, the primary prevention trial, Victorian 2, which is secondary prevention trial for prevention of atherosclerosis. The big message for LDL is all levels of LDL are atherogenic above the level which are warmed, which is roughly 30, and all levels of LDL are safe above the level which we are warmed, which is about 30 milligrams. Next, obesity is rocking the entire world, and you can see the horrifying statistics. Obesity is now a disease, is no longer a risk factor. It has a potential to produce a panoply of complications, as you can see on the screen. But now, as you heard in the morning, we are amidst a drug revolution in obesity. We have single agonists like semaglutide, injectable 2.4, decreases your weight by 16 or 17%. We have dual agonists like tirzepatide, which decreases weight by 9.5 to 13 kg, and massive reduction in HbA1c 2.07 to 2.59 in the SURPASS trial. And we have cagrilintide, which is being tested, a combination of cagrilintide and semaglutide, which decreases weight by 17%. And this is the SURMOUNT-1 with tirzepatide. You can see weight reduction was to the tune of 22.5%. And we have triple agonist retatrutide, which decreases weight by 24 or 25%. So we are amidst a drug revolution in obesity, and the gap between drug therapy and bariatric surgery is being narrowed down, and in future the use of bariatric surgery will be minimized. The big question is, does AOM anti-obesity improve CV outcome? The answer is a big yes. We have data from the SELECT trial, which decreased cardiovascular death, MI, and stroke by 20%. A secondary prevention trial, we have data from SOUL. I'll show you the data. And 2 HepPEP trials, STEP-HepPEP and STEP-HepDM, and the SUMMIT trial, which also showed improvement in the CV outcome, and the SURMOUNT trial, which also showed improvement in the outcome in OSA. This is the SOUL trial, which was presented recently. You can see nearly 10,000 patients, half to semaglutide 14 milligram oral and half to placebo. Patient had ASCVD, CKD or both. And this is the baseline characteristic. You can see elderly, HbA1c 8, long-standing duration, obese patient, and a substantial number had CAD, CK. So all the three components, CAD 70%, cerebrovascular disease 21%, and PAD also, heart failure and CKD. And interestingly, 26% were on SGLT2, and the benefit was same irrespective of semaglutide. The trial was positive, 14% reduction in the primary endpoint of cardiovascular death, MI, stroke. Death was a numerical reduction, non-fatal numerical reduction, MI, and non-fatal stroke also there was a numerical reduction. There's also a numerical reduction in the CKD events. The trial was also carried out oral semaglutide, injectable semaglutide with peripheral vascular disease, 1 milligram per week, and again you can see improvement in the result, increase in the walking distance, pain-free walking, and quality of life, and fewer limb events. When we come to HFpEF, this is the pooled analysis of both the HFpEF trial, and you can see time to first HF event or CV death, statistically significant improvement, and of course quality of life, KCCU did improve. And we now had this summit trial with tirzepatide. You can see the primary endpoint was a death from CV cause of worsening. Again, a statistically significant improvement of 38%, with a significant few driven mainly through hospitalization for HF. And of course, the quality of life did improve. So the big emerging question is, will injectable semaglutide and tirzepatide be classified as a heart failure drug, specifically for the obese phenotype of HFpEF, not for other types, maybe in times to come. When we look at the structural heart disease, there has been a big revolution. When we were a student, valvular heart disease was a domain of the surgeon. But what we find today is virtually all valvular heart disease can be tackled by percutaneous catheter intervention, as you can see on the slide. Where is mitral stenosis, mitral valve replacement, mitral valve repair, pulmonary stenosis, aortic stenosis, aortic regurgitation, tricuspid regurgitation, and so on. And this is a very interesting trial, again presented in ACC 25, the line which for the first time utilized TAVR for patients with aortic regurgitation. It has been used extensively for patients with aortic stenosis, and this was done in patients who are a high surgical risk. They had no other options, moderate to severe AR and symptomatic, and the trial was positive, and in times to come, this may be a good option rather than a boon for these patients. Tricuspid regurgitation, again, is a very distressing situation. It interferes with the quality of life. Patient remains in systemic venous congestion persistently. The surgeon also usually do not want to take because there is associated valvular disease, and there are several other problems. But this edge-to-edge repair with tricuspid valve in the tri-eliminate sign has shown substantial reduction in the severity of tricuspid regurgitation and functional class. Now, when we look at the drug molecules, SGLT2 inhibitors are the molecule of the first quarter of the 21st century. And the beauty of SGLT2 inhibitor is the panacea for heart failure. It can be used across the heart failure irrespective of the ejection fraction. Unlike beta blockers, where the benefit stops at 40%, RNA stops at 55% or so, MR 50 to 50%. But SGLT2 across is a boon for CKD, is postponed dialysis by 10 to 15 years or more, as you can see on this slide. SGLT2 inhibitors continue to surprise us. We continue to learn, and this again is a new surprise. For the first time, DAPA has been tested in a valvular heart disease. Patients of TAVI, patient of aortic stenosis who underwent TAVR, they had heart failure history with at least one of the conditions like renal insufficiency, diabetes, or left ventricular systolic function. And you can see the primary endpoint, all-cause death from any cause of worsening heart failure, a statistically significant improvement driven mainly through decrease in worsening heart failure. Wearable digital health services and devices and wearable health technologies are multiple of them are available. Many of us do wear to see you are walking 10,000 steps or not, and there's several other parameters which can be evaluated. Artificial intelligence, we are going to have a separate lecture, is the future of medicine, and they can be utilized for various electrocardiograms, interpretation, echo, MRI, nuclear CT, coronary, and there are many other uses of artificial intelligence. We have a separate lecture on it. Regenerative and stem cell therapy in cardiovascular care. All of us know heart failure once sets in runs a malignant progression with a very high morbidity and mortality. The 5-year mortality may be to the tune of 50%, a figure higher than most of the malignant lesion, but this is going to decrease with the current 4 foundational drugs. Drug therapy, device therapy, no doubt blunts this malignant progression and improves survival, but does not arrest the progression of the disease. because the human myocyte is not endowed with an endogenous capacity for repair. Once dead, is dead forever, and therefore cell therapies emerge as a very exciting option for heart failure. But despite many, many years and many, many trials, we still do not know if the end of the beginning or beginning of the end. But the hope always remains one day this therapy may be successful. So thank you very much for your kind attention, and I'll stop sharing the slide.
Thank you, Dr. Manoria. It was a wonderful lecture. You covered almost all the aspects in the field of cardiology.
Started with lipids, and thereafter you talked about the plaque, wonderful, and then of course the basic molecules, lipidology. You have covered practically extensive aspect, but I'm sure Rohit will have many questions that will be being asked. Yes, Rohit.
In fact, I don't have questions. I am really so much happy that he covered each and every fields of the cardiology, and he gave us so much of information which is happening new abroad and here. I think it is wonderful, especially gene therapy has lots of hopes. And Dr. Manoria, do you have a personal experience about these gene therapies in cardiology?
At the moment, the CRISPR technology is very, very costly, not available for public use, but pelacarsen is going to be available. We have the small interfering RNA inclisiran, which we are using it. The small interfering RNA 3 for LPA are still not approved, but pelacarsen likely, hopefully, will be approved and we will be able to use it. Inclisiran, I think most of us are using it, which is a small interfering RNA once in 6 months. Other drugs for triglyceride loading and mix still, it will take time to be available in the market, but I think the technology is fantastic and the adherence will be great, although cost will be a problem at least in the initial few years, maybe in the first few decades.
Dr. Manoria, you have ended on an optimistic note, which is very reassuring to the patient community. But I will raise just two queries which you can answer. Number one is in relation to the fact that most of the newer therapies, some of them particularly which are applicable on a mass basis, they are meant for lifetime fight in terms of drugs being taken lifelong. That is number one difficulty of some of the patients to talk to us in clinical practice. And the second, of course, is the dilemma raised at the end of the previous speaker's talk that there is extensive atherosclerosis documented, but there is no symptom. What requires to be done by good clinicians? Can you answer these two questions, please?
See, adherence to therapy is really a big problem, but some of these technology, particularly the CRISPR, is once in lifetime. You get your gene silenced and rest of the life your LDL will be lowered. So that is the biggest advantage, because none of us want to take drug every day and we will miss. If you take 3 drugs, you will miss. The other technologies, gene is, some of them, most of them are once in 6 months at the moment, but I'm sure in times to come they may become yearly. For example, PCSK9 vaccine is being tested for once a year. So in times to come, I think we will have options, although they may be costly, to improve adherence. This CRISPR technology is going to be unique, and it's not only being tried for PCSK9, it's being tried for other, although these trials are still in the preliminary stages. So adherence will be solved to a great extent in times to come by these technology. Secondly, atherosclerosis is a deadly disease, and I think the best way to treat is prevention. I've shown you that lifelong marathon for LDL. If you keep your LDL less than 70 from early life, atherosclerosis will not progress, and that is the way to tackle atherosclerosis. If you keep less than 50, atherosclerosis, whatever you are having, will regress. So I think the aim and the focus should be on preventing atherosclerosis. Once you develop atherosclerosis, once your cumulative exposure of LDL has crossed 6,000, 7,000, you are bound to get atherosclerosis payment. At that particular moment, if you use whatever drugs, very intensive therapy, the benefit is much less. Suppose you are taking 10 milligram atorvastatin or rosuvastatin from 30 years or 25 years, you will be at a greater benefit compared to another patient who starts atorvastatin at 80 or rosa 40 at 50, 60 years. So You have to realize that in the Indian context, when you are getting myocardial infarction between 20 to 30, once or twice a month in our centers, also in other centers, 30 to 40 myocardial infarction is not common. After 40, it's a routine. So in Indian context, even though there are no trials, prevention of atherosclerosis have to be started at a much younger age. All trials in West, if you are 40 to 75, then start setting. It's not applicable. You will die. Many of them will die before reaching 40. So I think atherosclerosis, once it develops, whether treat or not treat may be a dilemma. But if you have a large area of myocardial ischemia, more than 10%, people will opt for a revascularization, which means by a nuclear study, you see what is the area of ischemia. If the ischemia is more than 10%, it is seen that you improve in morbidity and mortality. Even the what was trial, that initial trial which was done, that also showed in a selective sub-study that those patients who had more than 10% of myocardial ischemia, revascularization should be done. The COURAGE trial.
PC
So well said.
Manoria,
Thank you very much, Dr. Manoria. Only the point that remains, which you have already stated, is the fact what are the dimensions which will be added through the virtue of AI. And there's a lot of hope and promise what AI will be doing to the scenario in cardiology in general, in specific, and medicine in general. Over to you, Rohit.
yes, Manoria sir, I'm so happy. You are like our Indian Brownwald. You and Brownwald both will grow 100 years of life if you follow what you are teaching. And I'm very, I know you very well personally. You are following what you are teaching, and I wish you live more than 100 years. Thank you,
I think
Manoria sir. Now over
my
to
message
next.
is, I think all of you must keep your LDL at very low. Our LDL is around about 30, 35, 40. I think all of us, from whatever age you are, LDL lowering is a very important, although other risk factors are important. But the issue is, if there is no plaque, how will diabetes increase? How will smoking? Plaque has to be there. That's why, although other risk factors become infectious if the plaque is not there, all the risk factors for plaque becomes important when the plaque develops. If plaque does not, what will smoking do? What will other things will not do that much harm as we do, because they all basically are executed through the plaque. There's one question in the chat box, that is there an ethnic difference? I think we don't have data for gene silencing in state at the moment.
Thank you very much. I think now we'll move on to the next session.